Welcome everyone to the Oceania region panel. I'm your host for today, Tia Squire, and we are joined by our panelists, Tori Ha, Rebecca McCash, Hayden McDonald, and Aaron Jackson, who are here to share with us their authentic lived experiences of autism and how we can move from surviving to thriving in the Oceania region. Before we dive into the panel, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the country throughout Australia and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. We pay our respects to the people, the cultures, and the elders past, present, and emerging. We would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many regions of the world we are joined by today. To get us started, the first question that we have directed to all of our panelists is, what difference do you think autistic people can make when they realise and are supported to achieve their potential? So let's start with Rebecca.
I think the world desperately needs autistic people. With the massive, complex, sticky, enduring problems facing humanity today, I don't think we're in a position to deny the contributions that autistic people can make to solving them. Non-linear problems require solutions that are thought up by non-linear minds. We need people who don't fit neatly in a box or colour within the lines, people who are brave enough to stand up and say that the box is not good enough, with the courage to build new, better boxes or squares or triangles or hexagons. Unfortunately, many autistic people who have incredible minds and so much potential are being left behind by the systems we are forced to fit into. And if we don't work to address these systemic failures, we risk losing this potential to things like depression and the myriad of mental health challenges that can come alongside being an autistic person in the world.
Thank you, Rebecca. Aaron.
So autistic people experience the world differently. We think differently. We connect dots that other people can't even see. We offer a value that is quite unique, and it's known as divergent thinking. Divergent thinking can be a great source of creativity and original ideas. In the age of AI, this ability will become even more valued as it's something that AI models can't do yet. So this is really about positive attitude and acceptance. It's also about keeping an open mind and not placing limiting beliefs on what autistic people can and can't do. Rather, I suggest we let the autistic person decide what they can and can't do. The way that we talk and interact with people can have a huge impact on how they see themselves. Leaders are said to hold the mirror up to people to show them what they can't see about themselves, which in this case would be the potential hidden deep within. Believing that you can do and be more than you are is a very powerful belief. One caveat I would like to add to this is autistic people can have certain things that are limitations, and no amount of belief will change this. I found participating in the neurodiversity movement very rewarding, and it's a cause I believe in. The neurodiversity movement is also a form of community and can be a form of support, as I have found it to be.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, Hayden.
A lot of people I tend to get wrong is that they tend to fall back on the medical model, and unfortunately that's what aviation tends to do. And unfortunately that's a very old model. They actively see autism as a disease. It's not a disease. It's not a disease at all. So, and it should be considered, okay, maybe instead of doing this, maybe we could probably put some accommodations in place. We have some very good minds. We have a lot of good minds. We see stuff in a very different way. You have to work twice as hard. Well, me personally have to work twice as hard to get the same results. That should be saying something to our work ethic as well.
Thank you so much for sharing your points. So now we'll jump over to Tori.
Thanks, Tia. I think it's really important to recognise that there's not just one kind of success and fulfilment, and that meaningful lives can exist in many different ways, and with people doing lots of different things and having different building blocks in their lives. So I just think it'd make a massive difference and would uncover a lot of currently hidden or unrealised potential if autistic people were just able to be accepted and embrace who they are without constantly having to be measured against a picture of success that doesn't suit our neurology, our interests, or our life goals. So as a community, I think we can get better at recognising that doing things in different times or in different ways is valid, and that it's important to create space for people to explore what's important to them and build life skills and experiences that they find personally meaningful, rather than constantly being expected to try and get your brain to work in a particular way that's not natural for you, or fill up your life and spend all of your energy on all of these things that other people expect, without leaving room for your joy and your passions, which can often be where a lot of our potential is as autistic people, and would be somewhere and something that would help us contribute if that was celebrated, rather than being told to be something that you do if you have time and if you can fit it in up around everything that everyone expects.
Thank you so much, Tori. I'm going to ask Rebecca first her question of how does well-being look different in autistic individuals, and what can we do to better understand it?
Well-being really sits at the heart of everything that is in a person's life. However, I don't think that we currently have a very clear understanding of what autistic well-being looks like. We're starting to see a lot of research about the links between like autism and things like depression, and even some research into how things like having a positive self-identity as an autistic person can be protective factors against these things. But we're still really lacking any real evidence, at least as far as I have found, on what autistic well-being actually looks like and how it may differ from neurotypical well-being. And this will lead to a completely different type of approach in supporting autistic people to achieve that well-being. When we really started to question the ways well-being, as we understand it, has been framed around neurotypical people, we realized that we really didn't care about things like academic achievement, but we did care that our young people had a love for learning, because as autistic people, loving learning is a really, really important part of us engaging in our special interests and even knowing what our special interests are. And so all of a sudden we started to reframe academic achievement as a love for learning. And we actually realized that these things are often in conflict with one another. Loving learning is quite different to going and sitting in a class that is teaching you things that you're not particularly interested in. And it requires a completely different approach to supporting people to achieve that. So this is just one example of the framework that we have, and why more research needs to be done on autistic well-being. I also think it really, really highlights the importance of co-design in developing supports for autistic people, because without that knowledge, without that perspective, we would never have been able to reach these conclusions.
Another thing that you mentioned was about peer support. How do you think peer support is a potential mechanism for supporting autistic people to thrive?
So I think that peer support is absolutely overlooked and totally unutilized resource in supporting autistic people. A lot of evidence on the benefits of peer support. So I knew that for our young people, being able to work with autistic and neurodivergent mentors would be something that would be beneficial for them, so that they had someone to kind of look up to and aspire to, and ask for advice. We're all learning from each other. Everybody is sort of learning to unmask alongside each other, and honestly, I think it's probably the most beautiful thing in the world. And I just totally believe that peer support is such a massive resource in supporting all autistic people.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, Aaron, your question that I would like to ask you is, you talked a lot about your experience as a parent and how that has really opened your eyes to the things that you can do for your autistic daughter that you couldn't do for yourself. So bringing in those experiences, what would you like to share about that with us?
Yeah. So learning how to be the safe person for my daughter is a journey that has led to personal growth and new perspectives that have improved my resilience and ability to connect with others. Emotional self-regulation and co-regulation. I had honestly no idea what these concepts were until recently. It's common for autistic people to struggle with self-regulation, and I was no exception to this. Emotional self-regulation is the ability to control your emotions, but it's not the same thing as suppressing emotion, which is harmful. It's more related to mindfulness and being self-aware enough to navigate emotions as they arise and remain balanced. I can be put into a state of dysregulation from things as subtle as too much noise or too many people in a closed space or lights that are too bright. I have certain sensory triggers that can predictably cause me to feel overwhelmed, and my daughter is the same. I now understand how important emotional self-regulation is to maintain mental well-being, and I have the self-awareness now to notice when I'm becoming dysregulated. I have strategies that I can use to stop the dysregulation from escalating further, including the right medication. When I'm at work, I will get up and walk down to get a coffee or a cold drink. Sometimes I will go with a work colleague. This can be used proactively at times, and I find it really helps. Other times I will use controlled breathing with mindfulness techniques. Being able to self-regulate means I can now help my daughter co-regulate. Co-regulate is where you let another person borrow your calm nervous system. Through using this co-regulation with my daughter, this will teach her skills to self-regulate and improve her resilience. Advocating for my daughter has also taught me how to be brave and have difficult conversations with people. Setting boundaries is something I previously struggled with, as my default setting is to accommodate everyone else and not make a fuss. Through learning how to advocate for my daughter, I then started advocating for myself in all interactions across my life. The biggest thing that we did for our daughter was get her on medication, which has since improved her focus and emotional regulation, and she now enjoys going to school more than she did previously. We also maintain good communication with her school to keep feedback flowing to improve her experience at school and make sure she has the support she needs. So I also learned how to set healthy boundaries with people and communicate with them clearly and calmly. This has improved my mental health and resilience, and if I can compare my life to 5 years ago, my self-identity is now correct, as I don't see myself as neurotypical anymore. I have positive autistic self-identity. I'm not hard on myself when I need to practice self-care. I understand what autistic inertia is, and that experience doesn't make me lazy. And I also know that I have different communication preferences and learning preferences. So to summarize, I have learned how to self-regulate, co-regulate, and advocate to be the parent my daughter needs, and I can now do this for myself.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Okay, over to you, Tori. So the question we have for you is, how can we value and support the autistic community to support each other and promote understanding and inclusion?
So through my work and just general life experience as an autistic person, I've really grown to also recognise the value of peer support and us coming together to educate people and make environments and systems that we might interact with more accessible and inclusive for our community. None of this stuff is stuff that we can do completely on our own. We all need to kind of be working towards these positive changes and having these conversations. In the last 10 years that I've known I'm autistic and been involved in advocacy, leadership, and whatever other labels you might want to put on it, I think one of the main things that I've learned is that there's lots of different ways to create change. And it's okay to be someone who creates change in a more quiet or background way that isn't any less valid. People can have a really important message to share, but not be as comfortable with public speaking in an event such as this or write in a particular way. And it's important that the people who are considered good at those things by societal standards aren't the only voices that are listened to or included in the conversations that we have about making the world a more inclusive space and meeting autistic people's needs. So I think as an autistic person, like sometimes it can be really important just to understand our own personal story and experience and how important that is, but also to know the limits of our own experience and that other people might struggle or have barriers that they've faced or be overlooked in ways that we might not have personally experienced that are still just as valid. Sometimes it's about acknowledging the privilege that we experience and just being open to learn from one another. We aren't ever finished learning. Inclusion is something that I believe that we should model as an autistic community and not just expect from others. We want to be trying to do a good job of that ourselves. And part of that's about creating space for different voices to be part of the conversation, whether that be people from different cultures, people who have an intellectual disability, people who found out that they were autistic a week ago, people who found out they were autistic 3 decades ago under an old version of the DSM. We're such a vibrant and diverse community, and there's so much perspective and experience to learn from. And everyone's experience is equally valid, and we all just kind of need to, I think, be helping each other and encouraging each other. I think encouraging people can sometimes be a skill and a gift that you can give to people in a way of creating change that people overlook. I think it's really important, particularly when so many of us experience trauma in our lives and had all these barriers, that we encourage and build up the confidence of each other.
Thank you so much, Tori. Okay, over to you, Hayden. So a question to you, Hayden, is what are the common shortcomings workplaces have that may prevent the autistic community reaching their full potential, and how do we improve upon it?
So a lot of my specialty is more around aviation. It's been a passion of mine since I was young, and I want to fly for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, basically our air ambulance in Australia. And unfortunately, local aviation safety authority knocked back my medical simply because, unquote, it's because your autistic spectrum disorder, it represents up to unacceptable risk to aeronautical navigation. Ironically, I was already flying. So it does point out that there is aviation is very behind, like I said earlier. And unfortunately, there are some things out of control that we can probably mitigate, but we have other stuff we can sort of control a little bit. So if we can allow accommodations inside the cockpit. So for example, I visited the Royal Flying Doctor Service or Bundaberg base, and when the King Airs, they actually have a vocal checklist. So there's a part of the aircraft that reads out the checklist. That could be something it could help with, or ADHD, because that way you tend to go through a checklist and then you lose where you are, and then you do that. So you have to start over again. But with a voice assisted one, it could help you out a little bit. And I've read through the in terms of aviation medicals as well. They have a very autistic negative wording, so that could be something improved on as well. So, and in terms as well, like organization, or whether it's aviation or not, organizations needs to be ready. If they never employed a neurodiverse person before, they need to be ready and have the attitudes in place to be more open, and also be ready that their training standards not going to be their training standards in general. So the neurodiverse standard, not the neurotypical standard that gets pushed on us. That they're going to be or need to be ready in place, and that have the policies in place and the attitudes in place. Because unfortunately, if you don't do that, guess what happens? The autistic employee gets ostracized and left behind. And that's something that needs to be changed as well. So, and it's also needs to be understood that we want acceptance and understanding. The autistic community wants to be understood of what we go through every day, and how we get treated, and accept for who we are as a person as well.
We've now asked all of our questions to our panelists, and before we wrap up, I would like to acknowledge the contributions of Ash Smith and also Patrick Brown, who have been working in the background to organise and bring this all together. So I want to pass over to Ash to do our closing remarks for today.
I'd like to express our gratitude for joining us in celebrating the Oceania representation for the UN World Autism Awareness Day, and to further amplify and showcase the vibrant creativity, diversity, and experiences within the Oceania autistic community. We have compiled a book of poetry, images, and art. And this collection is a testament to the impact of neurodiversity on creativity, and offers a glimpse into the rich tapestry of experience that thrive within our community. So as we move forward, let this event not be just a moment of reflection, but a catalyst for continued conversations, understanding, and appreciation in an autistic friendly way. Together, we can create a world where every individual, regardless of neurodiversity, not only survives, but thrives. Thank you.
From Australia, we'll be now travelling all the way to Europe, with country representation throughout the event from Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, Netherlands, Scotland, as well as Poland and Portugal. Please enjoy.
Hi to all, here is Simon from Italy, and of course I'm in this panel because I'm a neurodivergent guy. So I received my diagnosis when I was adult, and this changed partly my visions and what I would like to do in my life for the next steps to look forward. I'm a designer and I'm a mindset as designers, and I always try to look solutions besides problem. That's why after the diagnosis I try to look up what happened and what is currently the situations previously in Italy and then on the globe, of course. And I would like to change some path or to create new path. And my awareness, and I'm very proud to be autistic. And I reminds that after my diagnosis, I wrote down on Instagram and LinkedIn and all my social network that I was autistic. And I start to look on how could what I could do next, which way I can help the community. That's why I started a project in 2023 that is called Asperger Online. And currently I created in December with some founders a non-profit organization with the name in Italy, aspergeronline.org. I would like to look out is more informations by a scientific aspect. That's why I've created a scientific committee around this to talk about autism and in general around neurodiversities. And then since I was a huge fan and one of my interests is technology, I developed some tools just to help people out there, especially in my environment, that it's the Italian environment. So first steps, we try to look out what could be helpful for the community. We would like to create a bridge to fix some problems and then to give the opportunity to other people to follow us, just to be proud and just to be just to have a mindset ups to help and to develop a new world that could be autism friendly and in general neurodiversity friendly. First steps, we have digitalized and engineering some text that people can do for free on our websites without any login, without any information. I don't take data. I'm a huge fan of open source, and I would like to put my brain in open source and to help each other with our tools. The second steps after this first one was to create a map using some API of Google Maps, just to help people to find places where could have their own diagnosis, they could start their own path. So I try to give this kind of vision. So first one is to know what we're talking about, because there are a lot of confusion out there, and so we would like to create this scientific point of view. So I don't want like to be a YouTuber or influencer. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm a designer and I create products and I create solutions, and I would like to improve the environment and the world where I live. We are at the beginning on something great. People think that that neurodivergent persons are less amount of population, but data, and I love data, said that rapidly increase thanks to science and research. And we need to put some of our focus point into the societies and to improve the community. Take my autism as an opportunity. A lot of achievements that I received in my life. Right now that I got the diagnosis, I know that 90% of that are thanks to my hyper focus, for example, of my personal aspects, powers in some stuff and some of my interests. And such as in our community, we have created a community that is focused on our personal interests, from mathematics to science to technology to a lot of other environments, and we enrich each other's day by day. I would like to close with a quote because I think that express a point of view that could help people to talk and to share information. And the quote is, "Nature does nothing in vain."
Hi, my name is Tineke Rensen and I'm diagnosed with autism, but at a very, very, very late age. So when I was 18, I started working on my personal development because I always felt there was something wrong with me. When I was looking at other people, things seemed to go so easy for them, but not for me. And I always thought that's because you grew up in a small little rural town and you're just shy, and all these other people have been living in the city, in the big world. Little did I know. When I had clients, they had massive results because I have an impeccable memory and I can see things other people can't, and I connect dots other people don't see. So for my clients, I am the perfect business consultant. But for myself, scaling and growing my business, I was not. I became a public speaker, and I noticed whenever I am in front of groups that people did want to work with me, because then they could see my genuinely, they could feel my heart, they could see my commitment, and especially they became aware of my knowledge. And sometimes I heard myself saying things I had never even said or thought about before. But that's because my mind is so quick. I finally became aware of autistic traits because of my kids and because of diagnosis. And I thought, well, if that's autistic, that's me too. That's just normal, you know, it's normal behavior. I'm like that. Until I realized that, hey, maybe you need to start diagnosing yourself. And I did. And there was no doubt I got the label of autism at 57 years old. And mainly because I could go back, you know, you have to go back a lot during all the questions and stuff, and during the diagnose process. And I could see how much I had already overcome. But I am now free. I don't need to do things anymore according to how I have pre-programmed them to do. I became so aware about my mind that I'm now not listening and acting to it at all anymore. So I am free. And I really wish that for everybody.
Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Drugan. I'm autistic. I was diagnosed when my child was in with a psychiatrist, and he looked at me and he said, "You know you're autistic, don't you?" And I said, "Probably." And he says, "Do you need a diagnosis?" And I said, "No. I'm in a fortunate position. I've been old enough and advanced enough in my career for it not to be an issue. However, during my lifetime, particularly as a child, because I have ADHD and dyslexia, I get corporal punishment every day. I'd be beaten for being disruptive, for correcting teachers when teachers were wrong, because I have a sort of photographic memory. The rest of my career, I've been fortunate enough to work in research and development and areas related to it within the life sciences industry. And it was because people saw me for my value of what my differences were that I was able to be successful. The one thing about being autistic is that you're looking from the outside in. You're like a stranger in your own country in some ways. And it's that capacity when the rest of society can identify that you are different. You're as different almost as someone from another country. And it's only when we can actually accept people from another country as being just a normal part of our community that we can also accept autistics. This is about inclusion of everyone, not just about us. We bring unique abilities. We don't see the world in the same way as everyone else because we never got ingrained at birth in the same way as everyone else. What we do is challenge authority. We see things as this is right and wrong. We don't accept that authority is always right because it isn't. That's by its nature. And that's what makes good scientists. Scientists are about challenging the world. And that's what autism inherently gives you, whether you like it or not. It's not easy to be autistic because you won't accept someone telling you something. You want to know why. Too many people won't ask why. Autistics do it all the time. We are the people who stand there and say, that's not right. Why is that happening? And that is not a bad thing in the world today. It's not a bad thing in the whole of the history of humanity. We exist for a reason. It's not because, there was something odd and we just happened to evolve. Part of our evolution didn't eliminate us. We're here. We mean something in society. The problem is that modern society expects everyone to be the same. We're not. And we shouldn't have to be.
Hi, my name is Matthew Punter. I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Bath, funded by the Centre for People-Led Digitisation. My work focuses on digital solutions to solve the high rates of unemployment amongst autistic individuals. Right now, less than 3 in 10 autistic adults are employed. To put this into perspective, the current rates of autistic adults in employment in 2024 are lower now than those of women and ethnic minorities during the suffragettes movement and civil rights movement. Therefore, it's both a privilege and an honour to be part of this historical moment in history. With that said, I would like to share my personal journey of neurodiversity to show what is possible when we adopt a position of awareness and acceptance as the default position in the conversation of autism. When I was 7 years old, I was the first child to be excluded from my mainstream primary school and labelled as the worst kid from Leicester by my local educational authorities. The problem was my differences were seen as dysfunctional, and my autism was used as the explanation to withdraw further attempts to educate me. As a result, I spent 10 years out of education, but this was a blessing in disguise, because it was during this time that I was able to build a relationship with myself and my autism free of the pressures of mainstream education, and slowly but surely I began to understand myself, my autism and my ADHD. 10 years later, at the age of 17, I decided to re-enter education. I learned to read and write within a year. I taught myself 5 GCSEs in 5 months and 3 A-levels in under 2 years. During this time of education, I worked at a special needs school for autistic children between the ages of 7 and 21, where I saw the same behavioural outbursts that I once displayed as a 7-year-old. But the thing was, I didn't see their differences as dysfunctional. I saw them as people and let them show me what autism meant to them. I worked with, quote-unquote, the most challenging children, and that year the school received an outstanding by Ofsted for its behaviour of its pupils. I received an offer to study psychology from the University of Cambridge and the University of Bath, and I eventually landed in Bath and graduated with a first in my undergraduate and master's, and later was offered a PhD. Now, as a PhD student, I am doing exactly what I did at school, helping neurotypicals understand the world of autism. Differences does not equal dysfunction. And when differences of autism are embraced, we all benefit, irrespective whether someone is neurotypical or neurodiverse. And recognition of this sort was fundamental in the suffragettes and civil rights movement, and it is the same recognition of acceptance and awareness that will change the future of autism. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pier Marone. I am autistic from France. In this video, for the World Autism Awareness Day, I want to tell you personally that my country has unfortunately many work to do again for autism acceptance. As for me, has been diagnosed at the age of 23, a very late diagnosis with many obstacles. Worse, my life could have ended in the worst way by attending a medical social center and a day hospital. This experience could have cost my life, and I never wish this experience to no one. As if that's not enough, many autistic people suffer from this kind of fate. I am not an isolated case, because many French neurotypical people still convinced that autism is a disease, a mistake, a curse. But let me tell you this. Diversity is not the disease. Disability is never a choice. The fear of difference is the disease. And that's why we call it tolerance, the dignity. And how to answer this? A new revolution is coming. This is called neurodiversity. It has been accepted and fully recommended by a world policy. From now on, the science recognized neurodiversity as a scientific reality. Archaeology, anthropology, genetic, psychology, evolutionary psychiatry recognize this. For a better sustainable development and a better terrestrial life, we must build a better future for autistic people and neurominorities, and guarantee a full life of dignity and respect till the end of time. Long live neurodiversity, long live evolution. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo, nazywam się Janek Gawroński, mam 18 lat. Jestem samorzecznikiem w spektrum autyzmu i z niepełnosprawnościami sprzężonymi. Założyłem pierwszy w Polsce klub świadomej młodzieży, który zrzesza młode osoby rozwijające się w spektrum autyzmu. Działam w Fundacji Autism Team i inicjatywie Nasz Rzecznik. Pełnię funkcję społecznego zastępcy Rzeczniczki Praw Dziecka mecenas Moniki Horny-Cieślak. Cieszę się, że mogę być z Państwem i jestem dumny, że reprezentuję Polskę podczas tegorocznych obchodów Światowego Dnia Świadomości Autyzmu. Chcę wyrazić wdzięczność za Państwa działania na rzecz poprawy sytuacji dzieci i młodzieży w spektrum autyzmu na całym świecie. W Polsce tegoroczne obchody 2 kwietnia celebrujemy kampanią społeczną pod hasłem Własne potrzeby, wspólne prawa, która została zainicjowana przez samorzeczniczą młodzież. Ta kampania i jej hasło ma dla mnie bardzo szczególny wymiar. Osoby w spektrum autyzmu należą do grup najbardziej narażonych na dyskryminację, przemoc i wykluczenie. Stres szkolny, przemoc rówieśnicza, przemocowe terapie, zapaść psychiatrii dziecięcej i bardzo trudna sytuacja dorosłych osób w spektrum autyzmu wymagających stałego wsparcia. To problemy, o których głośno mówimy w naszej kampanii. Podejmiemy bolesne tematy. Łamania praw osób uczniowskich z orzeczeniem o potrzebie kształcenia specjalnego, siłowego eliminowania tzw. zachowań trudnych, opresyjnego wtłaczania dzieci i nastolatków w obowiązujące normy. Wszystko to powoduje u młodych ludzi silny stres, brak samoakceptacji i depresję. Spektrum autyzmu jest bardzo szerokie. Mamy różne, bardzo indywidualne potrzeby, ale mamy też wspólne prawa, o które chcemy i musimy się wspólnie upominać. My, osoby w spektrum autyzmu, chcemy tworzyć miejsca wolności w byciu sobą, gdzie nie jesteśmy definiowani wyłącznie przez pryzmat diagnozy i deficytów. Nie chcemy być leczeni z autyzmu, chcemy pielęgnować swoje pasje i rozwijać talenty. Potrzebujemy akceptacji, zrozumienia, podmiotowego traktowania, prawa do bezpiecznej przyszłości. Chcemy być rzecznikami naszych spraw, móc wyrazić, czego naprawdę potrzebujemy, co nas krzywdzi, a co uszczęśliwia. Chcemy współuczestniczyć w tworzeniu systemu, wsparcia osób autystycznych i ich rodzin, bo nikt nie zna naszych potrzeb lepiej od nas samych. W Polsce są miejsca i ludzie, którzy całym sercem działają na rzecz praw osób w spektrum autyzmu. Z roku na rok tych miejsc i ludzi przybywa. Jestem szczęśliwy, że jako założyciel Klubu Świadomej Młodzieży i społeczny zastępca Rzeczniczki Praw Dziecka mam w tym swój udział. Jestem też wdzięczny za to, że mam wokół siebie przyjaciół, którzy pomagają mi zmieniać świat na bardziej przyjazny dla autyzmu. Z okazji 2 kwietnia życzę wszystkim osobom w spektrum autyzmu poszanowania naszych indywidualnych potrzeb i respektowania naszych wspólnych praw. Życzę nam wszystkim całego życia.